this and talk about basically like a carrying on from what we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I go to Arizona tomorrow too, so that
would be fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that. All right, can you see, what can you see on your screen?
High estrogen, low progesterone.
Okay, awesome.
Everything below it.
Okay, that is what I want to be showing. So let's go ahead and make this a wee bit bigger. All right, so basically extending off from what we talked about last week with our cycles and, you know, what hormones are elevated in what phase. Just to recap, we know that estrogen is more dominant in the follicular phase. That's where we could do more our intense training. We're more insulin sensitive there. So if we are doing carb cycling, that would be a time where we would implement a little bit more carbs. And then in the luteal phase, we have that peak of progesterone and then a little bit of a peak in testosterone too, and that sets us up into ovulation. So we have to have progesterone in order to ovulate. So for those not on birth control or lacking ovulation, probably have some low progesterone. So going into this is, you know, one of my mentors, or Sam, taught me this. It's called HELP. It's for the high estrogen, low progesterone people. So essentially, if you have high estro, you're going to have the opposite. So it's going to be low progesterone. And some symptoms that you might have of these, honestly, he calls it HELP because he's trying to veer away from calling it estrogen dominance, because that is kind of a buzzword right now to talk about estrogen dominance. Same thing as leaky gut. Leaky gut is another buzzword right now that you're probably hearing a lot of. This is what it is, even though like there's a lot that goes into it besides just saying leaky gut. So some common reasons for having this imbalance, which I told you is essentially your low progesterone, is from stress and the environment. And remember, stress is not just what we're perceiving, right? We have so many things that are stressful to us, such as workouts, inflammation, you know, that we aren't really perceiving as stress. So remember that it's more than just I'm stressed. There's some other things going on there too. And with the environment, we're mostly talking about like the, I think I talk about it a little bit later here, the estrogens that are in the environment, the I forget what they're called, exogenous or something like that. I believe we talked about that before in our skin topic where we talked about those environmental exposures, I think. But also having this HELP, I'm going to start calling it as, it can come from obesity, the environmental estrogens, poor digestion, or gut issues, stress, adrenal issues, and which adrenals are super important for our sex hormones because they kind of create some of the precursors for our sex hormones, or having some autoimmune conditions such as Hashimoto's, which is more of a thyroid autoimmune disorder. So some symptoms of HELP is irregular or heavy periods. It also mentioned short cycles. So you could have short cycles or short bleeding days. I think that's what that would be. Water retention, so you could be bloated, a little bit swollen. Your breasts are swollen, they're tender, so very tender breasts. These are some common symptoms for having high estrogen. Headaches, migraines, fibrocystic breast changes, weight gain, or maybe you're having irresistible weight loss. So maybe the weight is sticking to your hips or your thighs, and no matter what you're doing, that's just kind of like where it's holding at. And remember, those are high estrogen areas. So our hips and our thighs and even the back of our arms are high estrogen areas. Mood swings, being super irritable, hair loss, painful periods, and a lot of those PMS symptoms that you could be experiencing that we talked about last week can be caused by too much estrogen. So if symptoms are super heavy, probably to look at estrogen being a culprit. Also having this, it can lead to downregulation of your thyroid hormones. We've talked a lot about the impact of thyroid versus your sex hormones versus your gut, and understanding that they're all linked together. But because it impacts your thyroid and your gut, your body doesn't have the motility to get rid of that extra estrogen and detox it. So therefore, if we're not pooping, we have this buildup of estrogen and we need to kind of excrete it and get it out. And it's important to note that it doesn't mean your body is producing too much estrogen. It could honestly just be your body is not able to get rid of it. So instead of thinking that, oh, my body's making too much of it, it might just be it's not able to get rid of it. Or if you aren't ovulating, it just means you don't have enough progesterone in the luteal phase, so that can make you present to be estrogen dominant, or we'll just say high estrogen. And the issues with ovulating would be related to the LH signaling, so that luteinizing hormone signaling that can be impacted by your food, your exercise, or movement related. And just some little notes here of chasteberry is kind of I think it's an herbal supplement. I want to say herbal supplement, but we can just categorize it as a supplement to help get women to start to ovulate. So I was taking that when I was trying to get my period back, used it in liquid form, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But some other things you can do is also to improve that signaling with LH to FSH for your ovulation is getting bioidentical progesterone rather than synthetic, which you see in your birth controls. So this is also important for those perimenopausal women and women in menopause. So perimenopausal symptoms are, experiencing irregular cycles, hot flashes, mood swings, not able to sleep, so like insomnia, vagina dryness, and this begins like 4 years before a woman has her last period. This would also be a common time to see a decline in cardiovascular health, including increased cholesterol. So if you're kind of getting a lot of these symptoms and we're looking at blood labs and getting some feedback of saying, okay, well, we have increased cholesterol, you might even, as we go into menopause, essentially we start to create less and less of estrogen and progesterone. So that causes, just that hormone fluctuation itself causes a lot more issues that the simple like, okay, calories in versus calories out doesn't apply to these women. And you might even know your parents that have gone through this where they just felt so defeated. They're like, no matter what I do, if I eat right, like nothing seems to help. And that's not the case. There's a lot that they can do. They just take a little bit more time and to really figure out the root cause and the true imbalance that they have and how we can support that for them. So if we're talking about this high estrogen, low progesterone, and Sam, you already saw the answer to that. So what would be a way that we can improve this hormonal imbalance naturally? What would be like the first two things that you could think of from all the things that I've talked about? Like, okay, how could we fix this?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes.
I would say sleep and
Repeat. No, I'm just kidding. You probably do know though. Sleep and what's one more?
Number one thing, I would say nutrition.
Very close.
I didn't read it fully. I was listening to you and not reading.
Yeah. So you nailed it with the sleep, but the other important thing is stress. So we know how much stress is going to impact our physique, our health. Like that stress is going to be a culprit to having the opposite effects that we want. So if we're trying to balance our hormones, stress is going to be the biggest factor in preventing that from happening. Because cortisol kind of can shut down a lot of things that happen with the process of our hormones. And sleep, we know that's the number one way for our hormones to regulate. While we're sleeping, that's going to optimize everything. So those two are the biggest important things to begin to kind of tackle those steps in order to improve your hormone imbalance, or honestly, just general well-being and health. Like those two things we need to nail down. So as far as like talking about the gut and the impact that having high estrogen has on that, or I guess high estrogen could be a cause and effect from not being able to dump out in your bowel movements. So your liver is going to help this process, and that is helping rid of estrogen from your body. And a lot of people are going to be looking to detox. Like, I need to detox this, I need to detox that. No. Detox is detoxing using fiber. So you have to supply your liver with what it needs to process the estrogen and move it. So remove it out of your system. And that's going to be through fiber. So fiber, we can choose options. Well, it's good to have both of soluble and insoluble fiber. So I'm just going to put that there. There are the two types that are going to help like detox your liver to help promote this or offset the higher estrogen. Some foods that you can implement, because we want to choose the most natural route that we can control and manipulate first. And that's going to be, now going into the nutrition, is broccoli and broccoli sprouts, even any type of sprouts, actually alfalfa sprouts. I get those from time to time. bean sprouts. I think those would be beneficial as well. Cabbage, kale, flax seeds, and seed cycling. So I mentioned that a little bit, but the pumpkin seeds. So in your follicular phase, implementing flax seeds and pumpkin seeds help your body regulate the hormones that are necessary in that phase, so estrogen. And then when we move into the luteal phase, adding in sesame seeds and sunflower seeds are going to help more of that progesterone be present so we can go into ovulation. So seed cycling is really beneficial. Protein like grass-fed beef, lentils, eggs, shiitake mushrooms, carrots, avocados, blackberries, beets, burdock root, dandelion root, and dark chocolate all can help support essentially balancing your estrogen. Eat high quality protein. So, you know, maybe deli meat would be your last choice, or maybe you use that 20% of the time, but choosing high quality protein first, adding garlic and onions, B complex vitamin. And this is not just for, you know, balancing estrogen and helping promote more progesterone, but this is for my PCOS people, my menopause people, my post-birth control people. B complex vitamins are so important because basically when we're talking with gut issues, like we're not absorbing this. So we're probably deficient in a lot of these. And most people are deficient in vitamins just anyway. That's kind of the typical American, is we are overfed and undernourished. So getting B complex vitamins can be super beneficial. And as we talked about the hair loss and things like that, that relates a lot to your hair loss and improving your hair integrity and stuff like that. So B complex vitamins are super beneficial. Supplements we can also start to add in is DIM. It helps support the liver, detox estrogen, prebiotics, probiotics, and just a little note on DIM, because I kind of thought, oh, well, if I have high estrogen, I'll just take DIM, and DIM's going to help, you know, drop that. So essentially it doesn't necessarily always lower it if you have it, but it just kind of gets you optimal. It's fair, it works well, but not everyone needs it depending on what your certain case is. And yeah, just don't think that you take it because you have high estrogen is going to help lower it. That's not always the situation. And prebiotics you usually want to take before your probiotics, because basically prebiotics feed the probiotics so they can be beneficial. Some herbals to supplement your ABCs, that's ashwagandha, beriberi. I don't really know how to pronounce that correctly, so I'm just going to say beriberi. Chasteberry, those are all three things that you can use, and I have little links here on those. Ashwagandha can probably be used for every single person just to kind of help with the stress, your perceived stress, and managing that as well. So I just kind of added this here. I love this company, Now Foods, I believe they're called. I use them for my super enzymes, so I really like them. And then we have berberine, berberry, whatever you want to call it. Have a little thing on here too. And this is usually for glucose support, but as I'm going to talk about later, having good blood sugar levels or balanced blood sugar levels are very, very important for improving this balance. So if we have huge insulin spikes and things like that, that's going to lead to more of these issues that we're looking at. And we have chasteberry here. And you don't want to use it, like, it's best used in a droplet form so that it can be absorbed best, because if we're talking about hormonal issues, we're probably talking about gut issues, and a way to uptake those nutrients and nutrition that we're taking is going to be, what way can we get it into our system best that we can kind of like bypass the most issues that we have. And if we have gut issues, well, we need to find ways that we can mitigate that and kind of help support. So, you know, taking these droplets under the tongue, that's going to get into our bloodstream much quicker and kind of bypass having to go through the stomach. So for this instance, chasteberry is good to use like this. And I think it helped me get my period back, but at the same time, I was using a couple other supplements and did a lot of lifestyle changes too. I pulled back on high intensity training. I was trying to up my food, give myself more nutrition. Also took time, like it does take time to get there, but I implemented with this, and I was using Morphogen's Calm to help with some of that stress management, or kind of like lower that perceived stress or not have it be so much as an effect on my body. Anti-inflammatory, things like that too, to just try whatever I can to decrease the most amount of stress that my body is perceiving to have. because again, stress is going to be your biggest factor in improving any bit of your health, especially if we're talking hormone imbalance. And with that being said, alcohol is going to be a big, I would say, veer away from that as much as possible. Alcohol and high caffeine, as those are kind of like stimulants. And we know alcohol doesn't really help support the absorption of nutrients. So it's kind of giving you like a battle to kind of attack anyways. If you're thinking, well, I'm stressed, I'm just going to have some alcohol, like this is going to help reduce my stress. But at the same time, you're also impeding that from actually happening and putting your vitamins and minerals at a low point, because now we got to replenish where we were. So how we can support our gut to help remove estrogen. We talked about your liver and detoxing and, getting that out, but let's go back to the gut and how, clearing this out, having daily poops is going to reestablish this balance in estrogen and progesterone. So just let's go over the basics of how we could actually improve our gut. So this is, plenty of water. If we're dehydrated, we're not going to be flushing as much stuff out. That's kind of constricting our system. So getting more water in. Fiber, we're looking at the soluble versus insoluble fiber, having both of them. And aim for like 25 to 30 grams of fiber. So if you are tracking in MyFitnessPal, you can click that banner and you can kind of see the breakdown of carbohydrates and see what your dietary fiber is. Although it's not as accurate in listing whether it's soluble or insoluble, that's where Chronometer is a little bit more better in looking at your nutrients and micronutrients to know how much you're getting of something or what you're getting deficient in and the day-to-day foods that you're eating and what you could use that information with to supplement. So I know just tracking for a week at a time in Chronometer, I don't get enough like B vitamins in half the meals that I eat. So for me to supplement with a B vitamin is 100%, I would say, not perfect, but it's good for that situation because I know I'm not getting it in my day-to-day diet. So to supplement with it is going to help improve my overall diet intake of those nutrients. Sleep, getting good quality sleep, not just saying you got good sleep, but actually getting, uninterrupted sleep. You're not waking up in the middle of the night. You're getting consistent sleep and wake cycle. We're getting anywhere between 7 to 9 hours. Optimal will be over 8 hours, but that's not everybody can get that. And this book, Why We Sleep, is like the same. If you haven't read this yet, this is the king. This is the king of all things about sleep and the research on sleep, everything about it. I got this book 2 years ago and I resource it all the time. I look back through it, see what I highlighted, and try to pinpoint a lot of the research that he was talking about in this book. Like, it's just so beneficial. So I revisited that today just so I can be more up to date on what I read and refresh my mind of the study that they did. Like, so many studies they did on sleep, but they did find that there is like 1% of the population that can actually survive on like 6 hours of sleep, and they're functional, they're good. No health impacts from that at all. But they found that person, the people that make up that 1% actually have this certain gene that they carry. So they don't know enough of the research behind that yet, any bit more about that gene that they have, but all they know is that they found that that's 1% of the population that can be functional, survive, and a healthy, optimal person on 6 hours of sleep. So if you think you're that 1%, the odds are that you're probably not, because that's only 1%. But stress management, this is another way to improve our gut as well. Stress can stimulate or constipate. So, are we super stressed out that we're not having bowel movements and now we're constipated, and maybe you don't even realize that you're stressed, but that is a sign of, seeing that, okay, your body is under stress, whether you are aware of it or not. Or that is going too much. So are we adding in some other things too, like maybe too much caffeine, or we're taking laxatives, or maybe it could even be magnesium. Magnesium can sometimes, if we're taking it at certain periods, or, the certain type of magnesium can be more of a laxative effect than we really wanted. So are we having more episodes from that as well? Caffeine, stimulatory, magnesium, stimulatory, stomach acid and enzyme levels, all these should be kind of like checked off first before we kind of dive in deeper of, okay, how are we eating? Are we chewing our food? And not just chewing our food, right? But let's take our time chewing the food so we can actually break them down to the smallest possible particles that we can. Or are we somebody that is a rushed eater? I'm 100% guilty of this. I don't give myself time to sit down and eat. I only do that one time a day, and that's like when I'm eating breakfast, but I'm still standing. I'm multitasking. But I am 100% guilty of this, and I kind of lead this to be some of my issues is I need to slow down when I eat. I need to like actually be present with my meal, not be distracted and reading other things or talking to people or trying to smack my cat out of the way. Like all those things have a huge impact of your digestion and how well you're absorbing that or breaking that down. And I did say rush people like me because that's true. I just like sometimes go. I ate a protein bar as I was walking to the gym. Like, is that ideal? No, but I knew I needed some food before I just went to try to go work out real quick. HCl insufficiency, this could be high or low, and this is basically looking at your stomach acid levels. Just a little note here, apple cider vinegar or lemon juice before meals. You can add 1 to 2 teaspoons to take before your meals, and this can help stimulate your own production of hydrochloric acid. And there is a link between your hypothyroid and low stomach acid. Again, circulating back to, you know, the connection that we have between thyroid and your hormones and digestion. It's all, you know, a integrated part of our anatomy. No system functions separately. Bile salt insufficiency, this can help, or we can help promote that by a healthy liver because we store bile in our liver, I believe. Or is that pancreas? One of the two. Anyways, so notes on that. Enzyme insufficiency, we have these enzymes to break down starches. So amylase breaks down starches. We have other enzymes that we release in order to break down fats and proteins, all the necessary. Think of enzymes as like nothing can happen without them helping the action occur. Lack of dietary fiber. A lot of fitness people can be having too much soluble fiber than insoluble fiber. These are people that are looking to try to get their fiber sources from like tortilla wraps, and that's where they get most of their fiber throughout the day, but that's kind of like a highly processed fiber, not a true fiber source. So, you know, they're kind of just getting a blend of fiber together. That's not a natural fiber. So apples are good. You can get fiber from potatoes and natural sources like that. Constipation over, you know, having several bowel movements a day, that's something to look at too. And like I said, track in MyFitnessPal or Chronometer to look at the dietary fiber intakes. And last but not least is looking at your electrolyte balance of sodium, potassium, some other things like that can throw off your GI as well, and that we can use to help counteract that and improve it. So what about high progesterone? Is there something like that? You know, is there high progesterone, low estrogen? And it's more just like, what does low estrogen look like? There's not a lot talking about hyperprogesterone, so it must not be a very common thing. So some things that I did find when I was shifting through some articles and research is just some symptoms of hyperprogesterone. So what this could look like, having increased breast tenderness. Put a little bullet there. Apparently that doesn't go with it. Waking up feeling groggy or feeling sleepy throughout the day. This could also be related to cortisol. Feeling bluesy, mood swings, bloating, dizziness, increase in yeast infection. So a couple of these, you know, the bloating and the mood swings also relate to estrogen dominance. So it's kind of hard to see. Like this is why it just takes a lot of testing and time to troubleshoot these to figure out the root cause and kind of what all this correlates to. Progesterone is the main hormone of the luteal phase. It is part of the cycle that follows ovulation. We have to have progesterone in order to ovulate. If not, that is just, it's low progesterone and it's at high estrogen. So we have to have it. And one question I found that was, I thought, unique that I feel like some of you might be wondering is, why do I poop so much on my period? When progesterone ramps up and the bowels slow and you become constipated. Then it drops and boom, this triggers your period. So if you're wondering kind of why you might be going poop a lot on your period, it looks like it's just this spike in progesterone that ramps up and then it like eases off as you begin your period, and that easing off just lets it all flush out. So again, remember when we are heading into our bleeding part of the follicular site or the follicular phase, the first 3 to 5 days, that is when progesterone backs off, right? And we have increased estrogen. So not like super increased, right? There's still a good balance. It's like that, but progesterone is high in the ovulation phase. So once that starts to come down, it seems like that is when they could trigger your period and the bowel movements to begin because the progesterone kind of like teetered down a little bit. So I thought that was interesting. What is high testosterone like in women? So we need to have it. We do have it. It is one of our sex hormones, just not our most primary, I guess you'd say. Not even that, like it's essential for us, but our two most important are estrogen and progesterone, and then we have testosterone. So in women, it helps supports our muscle density and our sex drive. It is best tested for measurements and levels of this in the morning when it is most high. That is also in relationship to cortisol. Cortisol is most high in the mornings as well too. So some symptoms of high testosterone would be hair loss on the scalp, excess body hair, if we're looking at the upper lip, your chin, your chest, your abdomen, acne, oily skin. If this isn't typical for you, this could be signs of high testosterone. Increased body odor, sleep disturbances, irritability, aggression, decreased breast size, increased muscle mass, lowering of your voice, and in some like high cases of severity, it would be, irregular menstrual cycles and even up to infertility. So what could cause this? PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it is very much an umbrella term, meaning it's not just one thing leads to it. There's a couple different things that can lead to that, and a lot of times when people don't really know what someone's true issue could be, they haven't really backtraced it, especially for women, they're just probably going to stick you with a term called PCOS without a lot of like testing to really figure out if that's what you have. So it can be common if you are somebody that's dealing with PCOS. CAH is congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This is a condition that affects the adrenal glands that are overproducing testosterone. If we have high insulin and high blood sugar levels, this can also, cause it to be a little bit high. As insulin climbs, it can stimulate the adrenals to produce testosterone. While many body tissues will begin ignoring insulin signals, your ovaries are among the few organs that will continue to remain sensitive to insulin. And with PCOS, there is an insulin relationship to that. This mentions the chronic insulin overstimulation that accompanies it, because there is an inflammation, there's an insulin, and I think the other one is adrenal related. So 3 different ways that can be related to PCOS. But the next question, does this sound like you? You eat on the run, you're that type of girl that eats a bag of gluten-free pretzels or fruit when you're feeling desperately hungry. So those are actually spikes and dips in your blood sugar that are creating a strain on your adrenals, and as a result, inflammation goes up, because stress, inflammation kind of correlate together. So if you're going through these phases a lot where you go a long time without eating, you're ravenously hungry, and you're eating everything in sight, that is a blood sugar issue that we're looking at. So how do you balance your testosterone? Metformin is used to treat type 2 diabetes by lowering your blood sugar levels and regulate your insulin. This is often used in treating PCOS. So as you can see, there is a big connection between testosterone and managing your blood sugar levels. Glucosteroids, they're steroid hormones to help reduce inflammation. They naturally exist in the body and help cells use sugar and fat. Birth control, it is an effective treatment to block testosterone. However, my personal opinion is synthetically using a hormone to balance your hormones could be the very last thing you do. That really, to me, just kind of puts you back into a deeper hole and doesn't really fix the issue by trying to fix an issue with a hormone that's synthetic, so it's not even what your body naturally creates. But anyways, natural foods to help increase some of that testosterone is, eating fattier sources and protein in meals to help balance that sugar. We know that fat takes a little bit while. It takes a little bit more energy to break down, so that's going to balance our blood sugar too. So if we pair a carb with the fat, we're kind of slowly allowing that blood sugar to remain stabilized because we're slowly breaking that down. It's not a quick rush, or it's not a quick spike to our blood sugar. It's like modulated. And same thing with protein too. Protein, it kind of takes a little bit more to break down as well. Even though it represents 4 calories per gram, it is still one of those nutrients that can help with blood sugar levels, as it does take a little bit more to break it down, especially if we're talking animal protein as well. If we're talking protein shakes, not as much, because it can be digested pretty quickly, which is the point of that. Supplements you can take for this as well: DIM, again, calcium D-glucarate, and acetylcysteine, zinc and saw palmetto, and some herbs like licorice, and that can help support your adrenals. So a little bit more on PCOS, because this is kind of a thing that's talked about a lot too, as maybe more and more women are being diagnosed with this. I don't know. So you want to look at the LH to FSH ratios to be able to understand if you have PCOS or not, and then kind of backtrace to what was this driven by. So chasteberry is not going to be beneficial for everyone, and the best route to manage this or understand it is to get a Dutch test to know which one of these that you should use, which supplements you should use to help with your PCOS or your issues that you're having. This can lead to, like using chasteberry can lead to an increase in LH, which is complicated for PCOS. So for me, I don't have PCOS, so that was beneficial for me to help reestablish ovulation. But for somebody that, you know, has PCOS that is more in that range where LH signaling isn't the greatest, then maybe that might not be a thing. Luteinizing hormone signaling is more of that fertility. So it is, you know, adaptive mechanism to ensure survival. We got to have it in order for our body to understand that we are fertile and able to kind of procreate and carry on. It can respond very well to herbals if related to DHT, just a little bit more sciencey stuff there. I do have some more questions about DHT, so don't ask me about those specifically. I don't know. I'm going to ask more questions to understand that. So PCOS can be more adrenal driven, like I said, and this circadian rhythm herbals can help. So kind of improving that sleep-wake cycle, that's ashwagandha and glycine. They're more adrenal driven to kind of help with this. Can be insulin driven. So using herbal or micronutrients like beriberi, beribin that I talked about earlier. High inflammatory, you're going to be looking at some CRP levels. You can use some herbs, or you can use fish oil, omega-3 fats, make some modifications to foods, such as implementing those. Wild-caught salmon, wild-caught fish, you know, all that stuff. And then use insulin, can use insulin related. So you can use these as well, fish oils and omega-3s, if it is insulin related as well. And that's what I got. Do you have any questions?
I do. So when it talked about